modifier. So private can only be accessed within this class. In fact, this start and update method are both inherently private, so you don't actually need to type the word private. Versus the word public means that you can access, you can see, you can use this class in other places. So in fact, we want to be able to see and interact with our speed variable. So we will actually make this a public variable. So now that we've used the public keyword to modify its access, we should be able to see it in Unity. Now, a cool thing that happens when we go into Unity, if we click on our vehicle in the hierarchy, in the inspector, underneath the player controller script, you can actually see our speed variable now because it's public. And we can actually change the values however we want just by typing in any number. So I'll set this to 15, and then we'll press play. And you should see the car zip down the road. And a cool thing I can do, if I left click and drag on the speed variable on the word itself, if I drag it to the left, it actually brings it negative. So you can see it racing down the runway. Then if I bring it up, it goes up. And so this is a cool way to see exactly how fast you really want this vehicle to go. And then 5's kind of a good speed. Let's make it to like 11 or so, 12, cool. Now when we stop playing, our speed variable reset to 15. Well, if you remember, when we enter play mode, if we edit values, it'll reset those values when we exit to the way that it started when we were in our scene. So it actually set it back to 15. So we'll just bring this to like 10 for now, and then we'll save. A fun little tip for when you're programming, something that people commonly say whenever they create their variable, but then also assign it a value at the same time. This is called initializing a variable. And so we initialize the speed variable to be at 5.0 for its speed. So what you're going to do is you're going to create your very first variable so we can store the speed that we want our vehicle to move. Make sure that you use the keyword public so that way we can see this variable outside of this class and use it. Use the keyword float, that way we know that our speed variable is a number that uses decimals. We can choose what we want to name our variable, so we'll name it speed, and then we use the equal sign to assign or to set our speed to be 5, and then make sure if you use the .0 just to add an F at the end, so that way our program knows that this is a decimal number. And then in your update method, change the 20 to speed and test your game. And then while your game's playing, if you select the vehicle and then you go into play mode, you can actually left click on the speed under the player controller and drag it, and you can change the numbers by scrolling side to side. Now it's your turn.
Okay. Un momento. Okay. Oops. That's right. I need to bring that window down here so I can see. Okay. And fine. Okay. Okay. 0.0f. Again. And replace 20 with speed. Got it. Let's mark it as completed. Alright, and let's save. Let's do the run. Taking a little bit of time. There we go. Alright, it's working. Let's move on. Okay. Let's create a new script for the camera. The camera is currently stuck in one position. If we wanted to follow the player, we have to make a new script for the camera. Here we go.
We've added a variable to our vehicle. So if you select the vehicle in the inspector, you can see that speed variable under the script. Now when we press play, we can actually click on that speed variable, drag it, and we can control the speed. So we've got some good control, but our camera is still locked in the same place. So we want to make it so we can actually follow the player as they move back and forth. To do that, we'll create a new script. So underneath your assets folder in your project window, if you go down to scripts, right-click on scripts, create a new C# script. We're going to name this script follow player because this will attach to our main camera, and the behavior will be that the camera will follow the player. Make sure you name it correctly with the capital F and the capital P with no spaces. And then we're going to left click on follow player and drag it onto our main camera. Now, if we click on our main camera in our hierarchy, you can see the follow player script has been applied as a component. So now we're going to open our follow player script by double clicking on it. So now our script has opened in our IDE. And what we're going to do is we're going to use public variables, but in a very different way this time. So what we can do is we can actually get a public variable. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to use a class or a type, in this case, a game object. And so, like I said before, things like our obstacle or our vehicle are game objects in our project. And so actually, we can get references directly to our different game objects like our player. If we check in Unity, you can see now on our follow player script, it's added this line of code. If we select our main camera in the hierarchy, you can see that the follow player script has this player variable, and it's looking for a reference to a game object now. And so in fact, we can actually left click and drag our vehicle from our hierarchy into that box, and now our player variable is tied to our vehicle. This is one way that you can get a reference to an object in the scene for another object to use. In this case, our main camera to use the vehicle. So variables can be used in really powerful ways, not just to store numbers, but to store references to other things that already exist in our game. Now what we're going to do is we can do a really interesting thing where we can actually get the transform. So this gets us the current transform component of the game object that this script is applied to, in this case, our camera. So we get our camera's transform, and we can actually just get its position overall. And so this will give us the X, the Y, and the Z of where our camera currently is. Now, we're going to use that equal sign, that assignment operator. We are going to set our camera's position. Now that we have a reference to our player, we can actually use player. The player also has a transform component, and we can actually get that position from the player's transform component. And then if we semicolon to end our statement here and make sure we save, so now our camera's position will be set to the player's current position. So now, if I press play and you watch in the scene view, watch our camera and our camera should be set to the position of our vehicle. There you go. Kind of works. It's underneath the car, which is close enough to what we want for now, so we can watch it as it drives down the road, runs into the different boxes. Cool little perspective. So what you're going to do is, in Unity, make sure you go to your project window, right-click on Scripts. You're going to create a new script, a C# script. You're going to name it Follow Player, capital F, no space, capital P. And then you can left-click and drag it onto your main camera, or just add it as a component using that little handy button in our inspector for the main camera. You're then going to open up the Follow Player script by double-clicking on it. In our Follow Player script, you're then going to create a new variable. This time it will also be public, but this time it'll be a game object variable. So that will be the type of variable that we're creating, and we're going to call it player, so that'll be the name. And then in our update method, add this line of code. So you get the camera's current transform position, and you're going to set that to the current position of our player's transform component. And then last but not least, a really easy step to forget is make sure you select your main camera in the hierarchy. In the inspector, you can see on the follow player script, there's a player variable that has no game object attached. So you're going to make sure you left click on the vehicle in your hierarchy and drag it into that box. So then your player variable is assigned to the vehicle in our scene. So then when you press play, you can watch it as it drives down all the way down the road. Now it's your turn.
Okay. Okay. Oh, no. Okay. Okay. Oh, boy. Okay. Okay. Okay, what's the first? Let's read it. Oop. There we go. Create a C script called follow player and attach it to the camera. Okay, so we go to scripts. Create C script. And we call it follow player then attach it to the camera. Okay.
In our scene. So then when you press play, you box. So then your player variable of our player's transform. Then in our game object camera, you're then going to open up the follow player script by double clicking on it. In our follow player script, you're then going to create a new variable. This time it will also be public, but this time it'll be a game object variable. So that will be the type of variable that we're creating, and we're going to call it player. So that'll be the name. And then in our button in our inspector for the main camera. You're then going to open up the follow player script by double clicking on it. In our follow player,
Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, so main camera. What script is this?